I'd like to introduce a new folk hero, and his name was Bruce. Narrow in the shoulders, narrow in the hips, with a curl in his hair and a smile on his lips. Big Bruce. Big bad Bruce. Big bad Brucey Woosey.
If my words did glow with the gold of sunshine, if I knew the way, I would take you home. La da da da, la da da da, la da da, la da 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 da. La da da, la da da da.
Thank you all very much for coming. I am Kyle. I'm Bruce's eldest son, for those I have not met, which is pretty much just that back table over there. And then a few new spouses and children over here. This is pretty off the cuff, so we would invite people to come up after I speak and my mom has some things to say. We would love to hear some stories and have anybody else step up. I know my brothers have been asked to step up and speak something special in regards to my dad. Yeah, it's already 11:20, so I'll just start into it. What my dad would want. Or that he wouldn't want at all, right?
That's what it's supposed to be.
Yeah, so my dad did not like people talking about him, especially to him or behind his back, but nonetheless, we're going to do it anyway. So Bruce was a complicated person, wrapped up in what seemed to be like a simple man. But you could tell from the relationships he had with everyone here that there really wasn't anything simple about my dad. Firstly, he was a very hard person to grow up in the shadow of. My dad was pretty amazing at everything he did, and he did a lot of things. When he found out about YouTube, which was only recently, specifically repair YouTube, which I think happened way too late in life for him, he was suddenly repairing things that he had been holding on to, only idly wishing he knew how to fix them for years and years. My dad was the kind of guy who, when he was thinking about buying a pair of headphones, he would do as much research as he could online and in the stores, badgering specific person after specific person for information about decibels and luff notes, because he learned it all, just to make a simple headphones purchase. Hours and hours of research went into getting the best quality for the money he spent. So this made him an excellent negotiator when you're trying to buy your first car, and an amazing employee as a salesman for something as complicated as houses on wheels, which he would not like me calling him that, but that's okay. Charles Bruce Gould, not to be confused with another Bruce Gould, was born in Queen Charlotte City as the eldest son of the eldest son, going back at least 4 generations, on July 4th, 1952. And I only know that because I saw a picture of my dad as a baby being held by his dad, surrounded by 3 other gentlemen, and that's when my grandfather told me who all those people were, off the cuff, because the photo was in front of me. That's the Gould way. But he was born on July 4th, and while my dad never said it, I think he was always just a little annoyed to have to share his birthday with every freaking American in the world. And speaking of birthdays, he was a very hard man to buy a birthday gift for, or any sort of gift really. He didn't like getting things. He liked giving things. Christmas especially, even though the stress of that holiday could be a bit much for him at times. My dad was named after his maternal grandfather, Charles, a farmer in Saskatchewan, and his uncle, Bruce, a fun-loving uncle who lived next door and whose back is to me now.
Raise your hand.
He's the only one with his back to me. So, my dad was raised as the eldest of 7 in Sandspit until he went away to boarding school for high school in Prince George. My dad never spoke to me about his years growing up in Sandspit or his time in high school. I heard about achievements in athletics, shot put records, and baseball plays secondhand from all of his younger brothers, who were doubtlessly all very jealous of all of these accolades. I knew that my dad grew up hard and he grew up fast, and there are many people who shaped my dad's life, but 6 in particular have gone before him. Those are his parents, Dwayne and Laverne, and his 2 sets of in-laws, Lou and Mavis, and Don and Billy. My dad showed extreme deference to anyone older than himself, and to his parents' generation, he always had the utmost respect. Lou and Mavis were a second mom and dad to Bruce. He was always relaxed around them, whether it was talking golf or motorcycles with my Grandpa Catherine. Lou Catherine never had a harsh word to say, nor was there ever any judgment unless dinner was late or there were napkins on the table. My dad lived with my Grandma Catherine for a while, just the 2 of them there in Bellingham, and the bond between them was fierce, protective, and loving. Bruce loved his mom and dad and was especially crushed at their passing just before the pandemic. My dad got to have a relationship with his mom and dad later in life that I will never get now, as they both lived almost into their 90s. He got to retire and go on trips with his parents and get to know them as adults, after children, and watch them become grandparents and then great-grandparents. Bruce was a father of 5 children: Christy, myself, Kurt, Kelly, and Dean. Bruce was married to Susan for what would have been 48 years this year. He was the grandfather of 10 grandchildren: Gabriella, Robin, Cohen, Brixton, Will, Charlotte, Declan, Dresden, Sophia, and Hazel. And they're all right there, except for Gavin. So there is no doubt that his genetic legacy will live on in a variety of interesting and exciting ways, as I see a little of him in each of the 10 of you, in 10 little different ways out there. He would want to remind you all, take your shoes off when you go into the house. Do not put your hands on the walls. Always ask for dessert. And no matter what you are doing, no matter what the endeavor is, to always give it all you've got. Never do anything, painting a fence, mowing a lawn, folding and putting away laundry even, without it being your best effort. And you can know that by looking in Grandpa's sock drawer. You can count them like a billfold. My dad was a hard worker. He was always reminded how little he had when he first started, barely graduating from high school, missing out on spring training for professional baseball. He got a job driving for a courier company of all things, traveling around and dropping off newspapers to central locations around the interior of BC for their delivery. And then he moved on to another courier company that nightly took him across the border to the US for bank clearances. I don't know these details especially well. I wasn't around yet. It was 1973 or 74, and so there's no social media to go back and read. Not that my dad would have had it. And my dad had quite a tumultuous time from the age of 18 to 22. But in 1974, he re-met my mom, whom he had known since she was a baby, and married her on December 17, 1974. 14. Who was it? 3R? I think it's his 17 is his favorite number.
It's Robin's birthday.
That too. That doesn't matter. They've only had 14 of those. Then my dad was offered an opportunity to move to Kamloops and start a company office for the courier company he was with, and he and Susan jumped at the chance. Kamloops afforded them a real break as newlyweds, away from the influence of parents, and Bruce was close to the mountains for skiing with his brothers every weekend. But Kamloops didn't last long, and Bruce was relocated to Calgary to take on the role of provincial manager for the courier company he was with. And as he did with everything, my dad took careful notes, did the best job he could, learned every single thing about the job, and realized he could do it better. And he, Susan, and Scott opened their own small business, Professional Courier, which I think is weird, because if Scott's there, how could he be professional? The little company became quite successful until the downturn of the 1980s, but Bruce was fortunate to get into RV sales at the urging of some good friends he had in fastball. Nevertheless, the little courier company took Bruce and Susan from a small place in Springbank to their condo in Marlborough and into their duplex in Falconbridge. But RV sales at Automobiles led to Bucars as the sales manager, and then to Woody's RV World for the bulk of Bruce's working years, before taking a chance at Fraser Way RV, and finally Arbutus RV, before Bruce decided to ease into retirement on Vancouver Island. Okay, it's at this point in the eulogy that my dad would likely pause me, like he would on TV most of the time, and loudly declare that he knew how this was going to end, and then only once that actually happened, once his very accurate prediction had come to pass, he would pause me again to cry, "Ha! I could write this."
I wrote this, you know.
To which my response in later years was, "Why don't you?" So, I would love to hear some stories about the Bruce you knew, because he certainly was a very different person as a neighbor, as a friend, as a coworker, and as a sibling than he was as a dad. I never really knew the same Bruce that Dean and Kelly knew on vacation, or the same mentor and coach figure that Kelly knew. My dad was a sports lover. He learned how to skate and play hockey. I learned how to skate and play hockey from my dad, how to ski, how to throw a baseball, a football, and pretty much any other kind of ball, and all of the different sports because of my dad. He never taught me to play golf, though, but that's not for any lad to try. That's just impossible. It's golf. And me. But Bruce's love of baseball is a love story stretching his entire life. Whether it was watching sports and remembering every stat and member on a team and where they were and what position they played, or playing ball itself. Bruce started as a catcher in his teens playing baseball, and then he hurt his knees, and he started playing fastball in his 20s as a shortstop and third baseman. In Kamloops, he was known as the King of SWAT because he hit so many home runs. In Calgary, he played on two teams. A league team, because he just couldn't get enough, right? A league team and a traveling team. And the traveling team went to Hawaii 3 years in a row to the Bob Rapp Memorial International Tournament. And while I didn't go with Bruce and Susan to Hawaii any of of those 3 years, even though each and every single one was over a very formulative birthday of my own, and you would have thought, hey, maybe take your eldest and he won't harbor a deep and abiding hatred for the island state that robbed him of 3 birthdays in a row. But that's no matter. I'm never going there. But what I do remember from those times is barely noticing my dad play incredible baseball. Instead, we were hunting for pop bottles and cans to return to the convenience store at the Diamond to turn them in for candies with my brothers. And we missed all of those fantastic, amazing plays my dad no doubt made.
Dumpster diving.
Yes. Literally putting Dean in garbage cans. When the family built the house in Okotoks and we moved in, my dad's fastball days were done. And he started playing slow pitch on a team in town where he earned the nickname Pam, which stands for Pampui, which is Thai for baby elephant. He was oddly very proud of that nickname, and all of the 40-plus dads on the team, all overweight gentlemen, all of them had ladies' nicknames of one variety or of another. So, but he was only Pam on the baseball diamond. We were not allowed to call him Pam. I miss
Or
Pam.
Pampui.
Or Pampui. But I miss Pam. My dad coached me or my brothers, or me and my brothers, for as long as we can remember. When my dad tore his calf muscle in softball, though, in Okotoks, he hung up his cleats for the last time, and I think that was a very sad day for him. And there was always an extra pair of skis around the house because my dad loved to ski. In the early days in Calgary, my dad did not miss many weekends out at Lake Louise or Sunshine, even when it was almost minus 30 out and he had a newborn baby at home. He didn't care. He was out on the hill.
And shorts. Yeah.
In shorts or jeans. I remember him skiing in jeans once. Bruce entered a lot of Mole Star races and did very well at them, and then spent time, the money, at Pascapoo and Nakiska, teaching all 4 of us how to ski. And while my dad loved sport for himself, he especially loved watching his sons play hockey, baseball, and golf. His favorite spot at the rink was standing in the corner by the red line opposite the benches of the opposing team's end. Each son was, "Get in there, Alice!" And while we were playing, which is, I think this is a callback to the Honeymooners, but none of the 4 of us had ever even seen that show, so it didn't make any sense to us. But we always knew it was his voice yelling at us. But he felt that not anyone else in the stands would necessarily know which person he's yelling at. And all of them are desperately looking for the girl on the other team. There's a girl out there? Golf was another of my dad's loves. There were annual RV Dealers Association tournaments, and he would always come home loaded with awards and prizes. He came home with a TV one time, which in the late 80s, early 90s was like, you came home with a TV. Nowadays, that's nothing, right? But that was a big thing then, this tiny little 10-inch television set. The gifts from those prizes and tournaments, especially when he went to the Flames alumni golf tournaments and got to rub elbows with players past and present and all these other influential people, was always a great story my dad wanted to share when he got home, if we had cleaned our rooms. Bruce loved to travel. His final count was 56 countries. Cruising or trekking, my dad got the most out of his visit, usually hiring a taxi for the day and visiting the sites he wanted to see. And if you haven't seen the photo albums, much of my dad's travel was seen through a camera lens. I personally didn't get to do much traveling with my dad, but I know some of you have. So if you have a travel story with Bruce you'd love to share, please do. My dad loved television as well. And I have many fond memories of Friday night movies with hot wings and Caesar salad, with a couple of VHS movies, or Thursday night sitcom night, growing up to the sounds of Alf, Cheers, Seinfeld, Frasier, or any and every manner of televised sports, especially the Blue Jays, Seahawks, BC Lions, and the Canucks. My dad's greatest love in life is assuredly my mom. Gosh, it's just like a really close race between her and food. I don't know if you know this. My dad loved food. He loved seconds. I think that might be his favorite food type. And he loved snacks. Pepperoni sticks and nachos with salsa and cheese, roast beef, a little well done, with big fluffy Yorkshires and thick, rich gravy. My wife thought she could get my dad to love her by making him roast beef and Yorkshire puddings. And I think she succeeded. That's the only way she succeeded. My dad loved popcorn and a fully loaded hamburger and ice cream sundaes with all the fixins. He especially loved ice cream sundaes so that he could make them to share with littles. Making dessert was one of my dad's ways of saying, I love you. Here's a giant bowl of calories. He would routinely call home at 11 in the morning, well before lunch, and ask my mom, what's for dinner? He told my mom many years later, into retirement already, that he only did that because he wanted something to look forward to for the rest of the day. My mom should have replied, well, you've got me to come home now. No, anyway. And it could be why he loved to cruise as well. Because the one cruise I went on with my dad, he always knew where the best food was at any time of day or night. You gotta go to this buffet on this deck, and there's a little sushi place through over here. It's only open from 4 to 5. He knew that. My dad taught me how to change a tire, how to drive, how to paint a fence, how to be a good neighbor, and how to respect and cherish my elders. And I am sure there are many other subtle life lessons my dad handed down to me that helped me in a myriad of ways that I will never even know I learned from him. 69 is too short. He deserved a long retirement after all of that work. He deserved to get to see his grandchildren grow into adulthood. He earned getting to see countries 57 and beyond. My dad was not maudlin though, and he did not stand much for letting a conversation go longer than it needed to. So I will end this like so many phone calls with my dad went. Sunny today. Been sunny all week here, but a bit too hot though, it's frying all the grass. I'm gonna go move a sprinkler head and fertilize the neighbor's lawn. Nice talking to you. Here, talk to your mother.
That's Bruce.
For celebrating the life of Bruce. But I'm going to expound on the Charlie Brucey story. As an adult, he'd still be called Brucey by Uncle Bruce once in a while. Old habits die hard. But Bruce got his revenge. When we would be leaving our house to go to Uncle Bruce and Auntie Glenna's for a visit, he would tell Sink in the truck to call Bruce E. Gould. And she would respond, calling Brucey Gould. And we would laugh every single time. On May 30th, we lost Bruce, our go-to guide. Somehow he had the answers, or he would dig until he found the answers. Bruce had an analytical mind, linear in thought, and loving and generous in all ways. Bruce had a great sense of humor, although he sometimes needed the comics bizarro explained to him. Bruce loved his family. He was a huge supporter of anything they wanted to attain. Any sporting event he could go to, he would be there, and he watched every second of it, and he remembered every second of it. He was a wonderful husband, a proud dad, a grandpa, an uncle, a nephew, and a friend. Bruce seemed to get more out of a 24-hour day. He loved his houses and his yards to look just so. I will not be able to meet his standards. The lawns had to be edged, and the mowing lines had to be very straight. Unless he wanted it to be wavy, and then it was wavy exactly the same. And all was tidied up and put away efficiently. The trucks and cars always washed and vacuumed. Bruce noticed everything. If you moved a piece of furniture or a painting in your home, or you got a haircut, he would notice and comment. He could even tell you what you wore for the last 5 days. Bruce was a planner. He would start his Christmas list in January and add to it all year. If you mentioned something, it went on the list. If he noticed that you needed something, it went on the list. He always had great Christmas ideas and then would tell the family that your mother got those and give me the credit when it was all his doing. As Kyle said, Bruce and I loved to travel, often with Uncle Bruce and Auntie Glenna. He would sometimes get better rooms for the 4 of us by playing up their age factor. Even though it wasn't an issue, we still got closer to the elevator and in a nicer part of the floor. Bruce would research and build a fabulous itinerary. We traveled on many fabulous cruises and trekked through many amazing countries. Bruce saw all of our journeys through the lens of his camera. He would take 4,000 pictures per trip, and many of his photos are postcard worthy. Bruce would then make a video so that we could enjoy our trips over and over again. I have 2 standout trips to tell you about. The first was our trip to Manila. We hired a great taxi driver tour guide, and we were going to see the Taal Volcanic Park. It's a volcano lake within a volcano lake, so it's really interesting. However, we were unaware that it was a national holiday. The highway going to Taal was not very crowded. And once we got there, our tour guide talked us into riding across the lake and then going up by horseback to the top lake. Auntie Glenna and I didn't like the idea, but we got talked into it. The boat ride was a little wet, but it wasn't a problem because it was very hot. But the rickety wharf we landed at should have clued us into something being off, but on we went. We were marched up with very small, skinny horses to ride up the hill. Bruce's horse had to be switched as his feet dragged on the ground. The ride up the hill was very dusty as it was more of a washout from a previous rainstorm than a trail. At a set time, we had to turn back or we wouldn't get back in time to catch our ship. So we never made it to the upper lake. We were close, but not close enough. Down the dusty hill, across the lake, into the taxi, and back down to the highway, but it was a parking lot. The driver had his Google Maps going and he was frantic. We drove through neighborhoods that are not public roads. We went down the wrong way while he waves out a blue flag, honking his horn. But we finally made it with 5 minutes to spare for us to run to the boat. But the poor guy, he was sweating bullets, and he had been driving on fumes, so I don't know if he ever made it out of the parking lot. We can laugh about it now, right, Auntie Glenna? We weren't so happy that day. Now, the other story, Bruce was afforded one of his biggest adventure thrills. He was able to attend NASCAR training camp in Las Vegas. He got to drive a stock car on the racetrack for 1 full day and then attend the actual race the next day. This was always a big desire of Bruce's. These cars don't have opening doors, so you have to get in through the window opening. Bruce was a larger man then, but he was also very nimble. So in he went through the window in his regulation red jumpsuit that all the participants had to wear. The steering wheel was sitting up on the dash, and everyone was informed before they got in the car, put the wheel in first before you strap yourself in. But of course, Bruce was so excited, he did it in the wrong order, and he had to undo all of his straps, put the wheel in and strap up, and then he could go. He loved the speed on the track, and they taught him how to corner properly, and I don't remember all the other details. But he passed one of the other drivers on the track, and that was a no-no, so he got in trouble for that. There was a driving instructor with each one of the participants. So after this experience, Bruce started to corner differently, and I had to say, slow it down, Mario Andretti. Bruce loved kids, the smiles and the enthusiasm that showed on their faces. He created Kids Rules Club, much to the disdain of their parents. He was the president, they had rules, and they had a slogan too, and I believe they even had a movement. He loved to take the grandkids tubing on the lake and make lots of fast, hard curves. But they had to follow the rules or there'd be no tubing. So he'd stop the boat, and they'd all be gathered around, their faces looking right at Grandpa, and they had to recite what the rules were, and then they could go tubing. He loved to send goofy pictures to the grandkids. Giant marshmallow bags hanging from his ears, or a box of cereal, usually Fruit Loops, waiting to be eaten when they came to visit. There was always a plan and always a twinkle in his eyes. Bruce always enjoyed a good chat with the neighbors when he was doing yard work, but not small talk. He wanted to know what made you tick and your history. And don't talk too long, because I've got yard work to do. But with Ronnie, they laughed for 20 minutes. Bruce was larger than life. We loved him dearly. And he will be missed.
That's Bruce.
I'm Bruce's baby sister. He was number 1 and I was number 6 in the pecking order. And I may be an odd one to get up here and speak because Bruce and I had our ups and downs over the last few years, but nothing that I would consider hugely significant. I wanted to give you a perspective from a baby sister. Some of this Kyle and Susan have already said, but I can't really add to it very well, so I'm just going to go with it. It was truly, truly heartbreaking news to hear Bruce's passing for all of us. It was such a shock. And it got me to thinking about our family over the years. And I know for a fact that July 4th, 1952 was an A1 day for our mom and dad. Charlie Brucey was born. So there, USA, July 4th had a new star. Mom remembered him and her dad better than anyone until Alzheimer's ruined it for her. Bruce had the fortune to be named after her dad, as well as Uncle Bruce. Her dad's name was Charles Edward Kyle, who she absolutely adored. In my mind, it was a great honor for Bruce to have Grandpa's name. He was a very thoughtful, industrious man with a quiet sense of humor, who I remember with love and laughter to this day. Bruce was very like him in many ways, always busy, good sense of humor, and a passion for things in life that he enjoyed and loved. He loved his family dearly. Bruce had a bit of a quieter sense of humor and was quieter than many of his siblings, which was more reminiscent of Grandpa. My son Eric is also named for this Grandpa. It's a good name for good people. And I think there's also a Brixton Charles as well, so it all flows. For me, my memories of my big brother are summed up best in the following. Bruce went to Prince George for high school when he was about 15. And I remember the excitement of waiting for him to come home at the holidays and for the summers. The anticipation was incredible, and I still remember the feeling. Him coming home was like a Christmas gift to this little girl. When I was 7 or 8 years old, Bruce would have been about 17, He had come home from a day of work at South Bay and had cashed his paycheck at the bank. Yes, Sanskrit had its own bank back then. It's an amazing thing, I know. And yes, paychecks were picked up and cashed back then, which was amazing. Well, this was a special occasion because the Bank of Canada had released the more colorful $20 bills. Bruce came in and he started laying out his cash on the mint green arborite counter that our dad built. And he picked me up and he put me on the counter next to him. He chatted away with me while he counted his cash. But those fancy 20s caught my eye. Not because they were 20s, but because they're unlike anything I'd ever seen before. Well, Bruce recognized my awe of the fancy bills, and despite how hard he had worked to earn them, he pulled one out of the pile and gave it to me. Literally just gave it to me. He was a big brother who loved me and loved my excitement, and in that moment chose to be incredibly generous to a potentially annoying little sister. In summers after that, he and Cam would employ me to keep their downstairs bedroom clean. I thought it was a good thing. I can't remember what the wage was, but I know though that it was way above minimum, especially for what they were getting. They were looking out for their little sister and spoiling her rotten, which to this day I blame them for that. I do remember taking the job quite seriously. When Bruce was a young adult, maybe 19-ish, could have been a little bit younger, I would have been around 10. I remember going to the movie Where the Red Ferns Grow with my 3 big brothers, at least the 3 oldest ones. I've never forgotten that night, and though most details are pretty fuzzy, as it was about 50 years ago, he made me feel very loved and special. They were all on motorcycles. I think they were all Triumphs. Not sure all 3 were Triumphs, but I think they were. Oh, Bruce had a Honda, okay. We were riding 3 across at some points down Broadway in Vancouver. They were showing their little sister a good time in the big city. I was on the back of Bruce's bike, and well, they treated me to the movie and everything else that entailed. It was the saddest darn movie I had ever seen at that point in my life. I came out sobbing. Instead of laughing at me, this is my memory of it anyway, Bruce decided to make me laugh. He decided to drive up on the sidewalk outside the theater on my car, as if it were nothing out of the ordinary, and it definitely made me laugh until the cop pulled us over. I was a little small town girl and the cops were very intimidating. Anyways, it definitely made me laugh. I don't believe we got a ticket, as Bruce explained my tears, and the cop was a nice guy. Other than Cam, I don't know if you remember, you could correct me if we actually did get a ticket, but my memories are kind of rosy. He just had that way of being the best big brother I needed him to be when I was with him. He gave me my first niece when I was 11, and I was in awe with Christy. He and Susan gave us 4 wonderful nephews who are amazing men, husbands and dads, and we're all so proud of all of you. Bruce, done good with you all. With your mom's guidance, of course. Bruce and I obviously had a 9-year age difference, so our actual living full-time in the same house was very short, 6 years or so. Over the years, as is normal, we got busy with our own lives, but I do remember when Clay was about 8 or so, and I'm going to give you some background first, Bruce and I bonded over hockey and love of all things Canucks, which I did question at times because he also cheered very loudly for the Donny Flames. But he loved to tease me about it and my love for Donnie Lever. I was 13. Canucks number 9, who was a captain. He even brought it up when he hadn't seen my wedding in 1987. Anyways, back to Clay. What does my big brother do? But he comes to visit and he takes my 8-year-old aspiring hockey player to the neighborhood sports store and they come home with a Synergy hockey stick. That was a pretty big deal at the time. It's one of the lightest, bestest available sticks at the store. Clay still remembers this and mentioned it when he was home a few weeks ago. And he remembers his uncle's love and generosity. To me, it was another moment of being the best big brother he could be. The stuff was just symbolic of the thoughtful, loving man that my brother could be. Challenges we had over the years can never, ever outshadow the wonderful memories he created for me. Greg, Clay, Eric, and I will miss him forever and always. And I just have a quick thing to say that my husband was going to say, but he couldn't come because he thinks he has COVID. The Bruce got Greg hired on at Fraser Way as a salesman at one point in time. I think it's probably like 12, 14 years ago, I don't even know.
Yeah, 14.
So Greg's first day at work, he went in and Bruce was having a sales meeting in front of 10 salesmen and women. And Greg was there. And someone brought him in a wet phone in a Ziploc bag and said it was ringing in the toilet. He said, oh, thanks, I lost that somewhere. if it rings again, I'll have my secretary answer it. And then he walked over to Greg and placed it in front of him and carried on through the laughter as if nothing was out of the ordinary. That was a memory from my husband.
That's Bruce.
I'm not the organized, fastidious Bruce or Kim. I'm the one that didn't get that gene. I look back and this and that. With Mom and Dad come on, I thought, yeah, there's time. With Bruce, the Gould family, all inclusive. What do you do without it, right? And then we go back. Bruce was a self-made man with a little help from Susan. I didn't help a lot because I like to ski more than I like going to university. So Bruce, commuting from Vancouver to Kamloops, well, that was on the way to Silver Star. Well, what better relationship? Cougar XR7.
Yeah.
Beautiful guy. Lots of driving lessons on the way up, lots of talking about skiing. Sometimes sports too. Sue saw Bruce leaving for the ski hill.
Yep.
We saw Sue and I leave Sunday night, headed back. My marks saw a lot of zeros. So I blame him for failing university. Bruce was fastidious, also addicted me to Adidas running shoes. High school in Prince George, he let me wear his beautiful new Adidas white with blue striped running shoes, and they fit. Oh, they fit like my wife fits me. I wanted to keep them forever, or two. I got them dirty. Bruce wouldn't wear them. They're yours, Don. What kind of a brother, eh?
Yeah.
Bruce and sports. I didn't realize how good he was. Ty Finney was one of the bullies that beat him up in Saston on his way home. There was a few others that waited for him after school. I was never bullied. Didn't know why. Brothers looking after me. It's hard to say. But he and Ty, Bruce fast, nimble. Ty, big, strong. They were hell on the wheels. They like teams just down they went. We spent a lot of time in the gym shooting baskets, Cam, Bruce. We should have been in class. My French marks were pretty low. Bruce spent more time out with his car and people in the parking lot than he did in school. It was pretty tough. It's funny how I never looked at him as dominating or intimidating, anything like that, but he was vulnerable. In English 11, Mr. Tripp, Greek mythology. We just loved listening to those stories. And then we got into Macbeth, where we had to do our soliloquy. And I wasn't a good speaker. Bruce was a scared speaker. Now, he ended up being an incredibly great speaker. And he had a soliloquy to do. And he's sitting there and he's freezing up. And I walked up and I put the open book with the soliloquy there. And Bruce just off it went beautifully. I financed his first car. Didn't know that, $800. I can't remember if it was the first one actually, because the first was a 63 Impala silver. God, I love that car. So he blew the transmission out of it, doing a reverse J. Just backwards fast as you can, drop it into forward, and get that beautiful rubber on the road. But the GTO, the 68 GTO Judge, it was red. It was beautiful. I financed it. I got to drive it to the mailbox because I didn't have a license, right? Connaught School, he ended up there starting off, so he was one of the earliest of our families heading off for school. I was 11 when he headed off for school, so I didn't spend a lot of years with him at home. It's really hard to know with so many stories. The trip to Europe in '78. That was the introduction to traveling, wasn't it, Sue?
Oh, wasn't it ever?
Some of it we don't remember.
3 snores in the room and me.
But the skiing, skiing on, what was it, Todd Mountain?
Yeah.
Heading up there, long chairlift, getting hot chocolates halfway up because you'd freeze to death by the time you got to the top. But I didn't know he golfed. You know, it's
And play tennis too?
the baseball. The baseball. Sandspit Islanders, Skidegate, Charlotte, rivals. Sandspit and Skidegate, the reserve, we both hated Charlotte. Rug Daddy was the coach. And Bruce would get on his bad side once in a while. So one day, Bruce decided to play for the Skidegate Saints. Like baseball was Sandspit, right? Like we come home, we won, the horns were going all the way through town. Like everybody did. The baseball, you sat close enough that you had a risk of getting the ball through the windshield, and people often did. But he could hit a ball. Some of the video I've given to the boys showed Bruce at bat with the Sandspit Islanders. Just an amazing talent. Then on into the future with Susan and Bruce taking us, Linda and I and the kids, on a tour to Disneyland. Like, it's you just idle luxury, right? You get in the car, the seats are heated, warm, polished. You know, the driving, he drove 1,000 kilometers a day there. And kept his cool, kept his calm, never got angry in the traffic or anything like that, right?
And Jewel whistled the whole time.
You know, I was thinking about trying to fit my family into Snoopy characters, right? Because I was thinking, well, Bruce isn't a Charlie Brown. Maybe a Schroeder, because he was pretty, you know, clean and shiny and stuff. Me, I was Pigpen. You know, and so it was really hard for me to be, you know, not hard, but I can understand Bruce and the way he struggled to get where he got. Both he and Sue valued what they had done. They had earned what they had. And that is a rare thing in today's society. And it's just a wonderful thing to see. So coming to the house, sure, I would forget to take off my shoes. It was nice to be reminded. It wasn't harp on or anything like that. I agree with the caloric thing. And the thing about Bruce not wanting to get gifts, you weren't giving him food. It was so easy. Crab, salmon, wing cod for Bruce.
Yeah, that was excellent.
You know, so it's all a balance. We had planned and we talked quite a bit in the last few months before Bruce died. And when my best friend in Sandspit came out and told me that my brother had died, I thought I'd shrug it off. And I was like, well, it's to be expected, eh? And day after day, it's just, the hole goes a little wider, because you didn't value it the way you should have sometimes. And it was not there. You blame yourself, which I won't do for very long. But for me, my parents aren't gone. Bruce will never be gone. The memories are so warm and so real. He'll always be alive to me, but not to be able to drive up to that house and breakfast and the welcome at the door and the clean driveway. And he let me work on my truck in that driveway. That's remarkable stuff. We had our edges. I was going to get firewood. And people accused me of being a duck with a bone. And some bones I kept chewing and chewing and chewing. And my rights, freedoms, ever since Expo 67 in Montreal. My aunt took me there, 12 years old. I had to lie because I was 13, but it was cheaper if I was 12, right? And I lost that one a little bit there. Bill of Rights and Freedoms. I saw it, and I read it, and I thought, I have rights. I have these freedoms. And so one night in the kitchen at home, I'm washing dishes, and I was giving some fuss to my dad. He said, Charter of Rights and Freedoms. What about the Charter of Responsibilities, eh? And he says, you know, if you don't stop doing whatever you're doing there, I'm going to put your head in the sink. And I said, I'd like to see that. So one of the things you got to do is stop and think before you say something. Bruce was very good at that. When I get passionate about hockey and hating the team because they were losing, Bruce knew why. He understood it. He saw the picture. He was a fan, not just for the minute, for the longer period. I've worn the hats, one of the only hats I've been able to keep. Well, I have two of them, both Bruce hats. And I think Oh, see how long Pink Dad can keep him clean. But his family, all the family around us loved these guys. We came up, we interacted. I was the shiftless one. I was the one that, procrastinated. I didn't get married till I was 50. So I could wander between the families, see how they were doing, what they were doing, how they were progressing. And Bruce was becoming, with Mom and Dad gone, Bruce and Sue, don't ever say Bruce and Sue are the same thing to me, to go to their house and it was like being home again. It was like not being an adult again. It was like having parents looking after you, loving you. Thank you, Sue.
That's Bruce.
Hello everyone, my name is Kelly. I'm Bruce's third son. I didn't think I was going to be able to talk today. My dad meant a lot to me, and a lot means everything. His opinion of me mattered a lot. What I was up to mattered a lot. He kind of shaped, I'm fully the man that my dad shaped me into. My dad had a lot of good relationships with a lot of people, and I don't know if it was a characteristic about my dad, but he always wanted to find the best thing that he saw in you and bring it out of you. Sometimes maybe that was misguided, but for me, he always saw the potential in myself that I don't think I would have been able to have stirred up. Growing up in the off-season in training, my dad would load me up on a Sunday morning in the Suburban, and he would drive me outside of Okotoks to the city limits, and he would say, all right, I'm driving 5 kilometers ahead. Your times better be better than next week, or I'm not going to be happy. And it wasn't the yelling and the berating sort of angry. It was the disappointment that you're not trying to be the best that you can be. Because he definitely saw that in me, and he saw that in a lot of people. And so the only thing that I wanted to really say about my dad today is that I want everybody to know that my dad meant everything to me. And him not here has not hit me yet, because I always think about my dad first in any life moment that arises. And I know, Mom, I know that may be painful to hear, but I love you so much, and you know that. But me and my dad had a real special bond.
From day one.
From day one. He told me stories about how I would sit on his lap growing up, and he'd read the newspaper, eating his breakfast, which turned into my breakfast, because he would give me anything that I needed to eat, at that time eggs. And he dedicated a lot of his time in my hockey career and just in my life in general. And it meant the world to me, and it still does. And it's something I'll carry with me for the rest of my life, with anything that I do with my kids or my family. And I thank everybody for coming today. And if you have a story to share, I'd love to hear it, because growing up, we didn't hear a lot about my dad's upbringing. It was just all about what's happening in the moment. He was a relentless worker, worked so hard for our family to provide everything that we needed to be who we are today. And that's my mom and my dad doing that. My dad was on the work line, and my mom was on the front line, making sure that we were all squared away and that our beds were tucked in nicely with our sheets and our hospital corners and our rooms were tucked in. And we were well fed, we had snacks that we needed, so he was everything to me. And he will continue to be so in memory and in spirit, because I'm a direct result of my dad. So come to me if you want to talk about my dad.
That's Bruce.
So I don't want to stop people from coming up and speaking on behalf of my dad, but I do have one thing from somebody who couldn't be here today, his eldest Christy and her daughter Gabby. They wanted to share a quote from Plato that they felt was applicable, where the soul takes flight to the world that is invisible, but there arriving, she is sure of bliss and forever dwells in paradise. And I don't see how that couldn't also relate to lunch.
That's Bruce.
Uncle Randy. I was introduced to Bruce in the late 50s. I can give a little background in here. I was the youngest of 11 kids in the prairies. And my dad used to introduce me and my sister Laverne as distant relatives. She'd already left home when I was born, and she appeared in the early 50s after she graduated from nursing from Winnipeg. And then she disappeared again. And then she reappeared in the late 50s, maybe early 60s, with at least 3 kids in tow, and a husband who couldn't stand the sun and spent all day in the cool basement. And my memory of Bruce and the other 2, one was Doug and I think the other one was Lindsay, I'm not sure at this time, are in the barn with us when my brother and I are milking, maybe Cam.
You're milking Cam?
Close. We'll get to that.
I've slowed down since.
Anyways, my brother and I are milking these 2 cows, and the Gould clan is standing there watching us in disbelief. They said, "What is that?" We said, "That is milk." So they had a little discussion, and they more or less looked at us as if we're crazy. No, that can't be milk. Milk comes from the store. Well, here, have a taste. It's warm. Milk is cold. There's no way. Warm. They go back, and I think that was the origin of the Gould clan, and Bruce especially, on fact checking.
Yes.
That's Bruce.
I'm Cam. I was the second oldest, but with Bruce there, quite obviously, I didn't have to take any responsibility. I was the sick one of the family in a lot of ways. I grew up with asthma until I was about 13. I can remember laying in bed listening to my brothers who stopped playing outside and wondering if I'd ever actually played like that. At 13, I switched that off for diabetes. And at that point, you couldn't just test and see where you were going from there. When things were going well, we were always active. I mean, we were more friends than brothers in a sense. We always had a ball club. We were always in the yard throwing the ball. Dad would come out and throw some high ones for us once in a while. And Bruce was very good at picking those off as well, except when they would hit the wire coming from the pole to the house, and of course that broke noses. And Bruce was the recipient of those. Yes. And but going to school at that point, his love of sports and then mine as well. Scrub was the big thing where we played, never had organized balls. There was maybe up to around 100 kids in school at a time. And so scrub was, I don't know if many of you are familiar with it, you didn't have enough kids to form teams, so you kind of grabbed a position by tagging up. If you caught a ball in the open field, you got to go up to bat. But of course, you started out in grade 4 or 5, and you were playing against kids that were in grade 8, 9, or 10. So you basically played the field, and you would catch one of their pop flies. You became very good at doing that, and you got to go up to bat for a while. But they immediately put you out, and you were back out in the field where you actually belong. So sports, you know, my memories are not good for specifics. I don't know if that's help or whatever. It just really amazes me how well some of my brothers and some of the people can put their stories together and give such a clear picture of it. To me, he was just always there. We had to go out to Prince George for high school at about grade 10, so about 15. You know, he went a year ahead of me. When I went, he kind of paved the way, although we ended up going to a different school. He used to tell me the stories, and he remembered them quite bitterly in a way, even not too long ago when we were talking about it. He went to Connaught High School, and one of his first appearances there, a couple of people, I guess we can't name cultures anymore, but they were a bullying sort, and they were picking on someone. Bruce stepped in and told them they weren't allowed to behave like that. He fought with those kids all year, and he got regular beatings from it. But he wouldn't back down. So he made friends there as well, number about 4 girls, and that were very close with him. And at one point, it was a real snowy day and stuff, and the other 3 girls were pushing him to throw the other girl in the snowbank and wash her face. And finally they egged him on enough, and she was kind of giving him the come on too, that he made the effort to do so. She threw him on his ass and washed his face. It was very good for someone so large, of course. Right? Those people remained friends all through our high schools. With the health issues, at that point we didn't have the immediate test kits for the diabetes. I got violently ill, generally once a year while we were away from home. There was Bruce that tended to me with objects coming from all orifices, and eventually getting me into the hospital and getting me straightened out again. I don't really have specific memorable stories to tell. I always felt that we were close. We understood each other. There was a strong connection. It really hit me to come in here. I'm not an emotional person. I'm more informational. Come in and look at those pictures. Sent me outside. Thank you.
That's Bruce.
I met 2 angels, but they were in disguise. Took one look to realize. Tell them anything and they will sympathize. These arms hold me tight. Old fears help to ease them in my mind. New tears say that they will giant time. Why me? How'd I get this? Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Laughing together like our thoughts are harmonized. Been that way since 95. Give me direction when it is hard to find. 3 roads, 1 line. Now and then I can lean my back to yours. Traveling like our feet don't touch the floor. Why me? How'd I get this? Hallelujah. She has come to pass. One I wish I could see now. You always remind me that memories will last. These arms reach out. You were there to protect me like a shield. Long hair running with me through the field. Everywhere you've been with me all along. Why me? How'd I get this? Hallelujah. Why me? How'd I get this? Hallelujah. Why me? How'd I get this? Hallelujah. Hallelujah.
I wish you love and happiness. I guess I wish you all the best. I wish you don't do like I do, and ever fall in love with someone like you. 'Cause if you feel just like I did, you probably walk around the block like a little kid. But kids don't know, they can only guess how hard it is to wish you happiness. I guess that love is like a Christmas card. You decorate a tree, you throw it in the yard, it decays and dies, and the snowmen melt. Well, I once knew love, I knew how love felt. Yeah, I knew love, love knew me. And when I walked, love walked with me. And I got no hate, and I got no pride. Well, I got so much love that I cannot hide. Yeah, I got so much love that I cannot hide. Say you drive a Chevy, say you drive a Ford. You say you drive around the town till you just get bored, and then you change your mind for something else to do, and your heart gets bored with your mind and it changes you. Well, it's a doggone shame, and it's an awful mess. I wish you love, I wish you happiness. I wish you love, I wish you happiness. I guess I wish you all the best.
No, I can't forget this evening or your face as you were leaving, but I guess that's just the way the story goes. You always smile, but in your eyes your sorrow shows. Yes, it shows. Tomorrow, when I think of all my sorrows, when I had you there, but then I let you go. And now it's only fair that I should let you know what you should know. I can't live you. I can't give, I can't give anymore. I can't live if living is without you. Can't give, I can't give this evening or your face as you were leaving, but I guess that's just the way the story goes. You always smile, but in your eyes your sorrow shows. Yes, it shows.
I wish that heaven had visiting hours, so I could just show up and bring the news that she's getting older. And I wish that you met her, the things that you learned from me, I got them all from you. Can I just stay a while and we'll put all the world to rights? The little ones will grow and I'll still dream much has changed since you've been away. I wish that heaven had visiting hours, so I could just swing by and ask your advice. What would you do in my situation? I haven't a clue how I'd even raise them. What would you do? 'Cause you always do what's right. And we just talk a while until my worries disappear. I'll tell you that I'm scared of turning out a failure. You'd say, remember that the answer's in the love that we create. So much has changed since you've been away. I wish that heaven had visiting hours, and I would ask them if I could take you home. But I know what they'd say, that it's for the best. So I will live life the way you taught me and make it on my own. I will close the door, but I will open up my heart, and everyone I love will know exactly who you are. 'Cause this is not goodbye, it is just till we meet again. So much has changed since you've been away.
The long and winding road that leads to your door will never disappear. I've seen that road before. It always leads me here. Lead me to your door. The wild and windy night that the rain washed away has left a pool of tears, crying for the day. Why leave me standing here? Let me know the way. Many times I've been alone, and many times I've cried. Anyway, you'll never know that many ways I've tried.
beautiful evening.
No crying for you. The sun will be shining, 'cause I feel that when I'm with you, it's all